just in time, we have our final panelist, Sudhakar, who will introduce himself, who you are, who you're representing, and your background.
Sure. Thanks, Damon. Sorry I was a bit late. Hello, everyone. Sudhakar Kandanala from Sliver Business Services, IT consulting firm based in Chicago, Illinois.
Perfect. I'd like to get started with a question to help us all level set and understand exactly what a digital economy is. So would someone like to answer how you might think about or define a digital economy? Thank you. I would agree with that sentiment. It's incredible to think that only 15% of the economy is digital right now, because I know it's everything from infrastructure to the policymakers, government, producers, logistics companies. It's really all inclusive. I was wondering if someone on the panel had an idea of what might be some of the most disruptive tools or technologies that will engage and speed up the velocity of the shift to this digital economy. Any other thoughts on major drivers?
I'll take a step back here a little bit. So let me talk about digital economy or decoding digital economy, what it means. When we say decoding, it means there is some mystery about it, right? There is something shrouded, covered, which we're trying to uncover. Now, that mystery, what is that mystery? Is that a mythology? What is the mythology of digital economy? If we think about it, mythology is about the creation and evolution or the story of any thing that we are talking about. So what's the story of a digital economy? So about in 1995, digital economy, the word digital economy was coined by, I believe, Don Tapscott in a book called Digital Economy, Promise and Perils of New Network Intelligence. Promise and Perils of New Network Intelligence. That was the book. And that's the origin, I would say, is the origin of digital economy. And that time, digital economy was about all the businesses that is done on computing technology. And by extension, it was about all the business that is done on internet. But over the last 25 years, the digital economy increasingly got intertwined with the traditional economy, and so much so that it's very difficult to delineate the difference or the boundary between the two now. So what I'm trying to say is we have evolved over the last 25 years since the time this word digital economy was coined, and today we stand in the intersection of very human endeavor. The digital economy is in the very center of the human endeavor. It has moved from the peripheries and came to the center. And I'll further talk about it depending on the question, but we cannot think beyond, we cannot think of any work, any enterprise, any business without digital being part of it.
Let's expand on that for a little bit, if we might. So given that the word was coined only 25 years ago, but yet has been so prolific in how it's impacted every facet of commerce, how are small businesses, local stores, corner shops responding and reacting to this shift towards a digital economy? I wanted to touch on one of the things that Dara brought up in her remarks, which was around the advent of these centralized marketplaces such as Amazon or Shopify that's done a couple things. It's introduced new channels and opportunities to these small businesses, but it's also created this centralized monster in a way. And there's an interesting article called Why Decentralization is Important, where the author, whose name's escaping me right now, talks about this S-curve and how when marketplaces are first introduced, they create an opportunity for developers and a two-sided market, the consumer and the developer, to meet and to interact. But as you climb this S-curve, the centralized marketplace begins to cannibalize their own ecosystem and take away data, take away permissions, take away the privacy of the individual users. And I was wondering if anyone on the panel had thoughts about centralization and decentralization of these types of marketplaces.
Yeah, sure. Since the business I run, Sliver Business Services, is focused in small and medium businesses, I would like to weigh in on this. Increasingly, we are seeing a divide between small, medium businesses and multinational enterprises. And that divide is going to increase in this new digital economy, continue to increase, unfortunately. Sorry, again, your question was specific to centralization versus decentralization, right? So we have seen, at least in my career of 25 years, I have seen that there is always a kind of ping pong between centralization and decentralization all the time. And one management consultant comes and says, okay, now decentralization is in vogue, we need to decentralize. 5 years later, another management consultant would come and say that now it's time to centralize. So I think debate may not be as much as centralization versus decentralization, but the debate could be, who is the beneficiary here? So who is benefiting? Is the business benefiting or the society benefiting? Is the individual benefiting or the government benefiting? Who this new world order called digital economy is for? If you look at individual, they strive for freedom. They want more ways to do business. They want different ways. They want faster for their own reasons. When we look at the government, it wants to govern, it wants to control, it wants to regulate. So there is, and government is acting on behalf of the collective, the society at large. So there is always a tussle between individual and the government, individual and the society. So in this very tussle lies the phenomenon of centralization versus decentralization, the tussle between individual and the government. And that has been there 100 years ago, that was there 1,000 years ago, and that will continue in this digital economy. We have to just figure out a way to live with it, recognize it, and adapt to it without creating more conflicts within ourselves.
It sounds like with the right access and education, these tools, the tools can really help level the playing field for perhaps the smaller and mid-sized companies. I think equally so, gaining access to this digital economy helps level the playing field from a geographical standpoint. I'm curious if there are any thoughts here on what the impact is of the digital economy and cross-border trade and being able to access new and different markets.
So it has a very wide implication, and we have already seen the implications of digital economy. It's not new anymore. We have been seeing the evolution of it for the last 25 years. As a great person once said, that science without compassion is one of the 7 deadly sins. I'm not able to exactly quote the phrase, but it was a quote by Mahatma Gandhi. So the tools that we have today, we talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning. We have to ask, where is the human angle to it? Are we creating those tools to alienate ourselves from one another? Or is there any, are those tools going to bring us together? So now the question is about the global value chain. So is the new technology going to create a new global value chain, which we have already seen? We can source our services and goods from various geographies. It's not local anymore. And there are many other implications also. The labor laws. The Uber initially worked around the labor laws and created the software, and now government started to catch up. Then comes the question of availability of labor, skilled labor. Then the question is about the rise of intangible capitalism. So many issues are involved here, or facets are involved here with digital economy in the global, when we look at the global scale, that we have to identify each one of them and label them and tackle them one by one before we kind of, try to bring them together and solve the problem which we have in hand. So I'm just trying to put different concepts out so that, there is no one answer, but if we put the concepts out, the issues out, perhaps we can discuss each of them individually and kind of try to arrive at a possible answer.
So, excuse me, when you talked about the Israeli government setting thresholds for taxation, that's part of this three-part equation that defines the digital economy. On one side, you have the infrastructure, you have the hardware, you have the networks, you have the sort of communication software component. On the other side, you have the providers, the e-businesses, the transfer of goods. And in the middle, you have policy and government and regulation. So in that vein, should regulation be put into place to ensure fair competition between large businesses and conglomerates and small companies?
Yeah, and to add to what Gary said, I think government will continue to be reactive because government cannot predict what's going to happen. Because somebody from the periphery will come with some innovation, with some idea to exploit the new emerging technology and come to the center of the economy and take over a particular industry completely. As I said, Uber is an example. Uber is not a taxi company. It's a software company. They exploited the network speed, 4G speed, and developed the app which could provide real-time status to the consumer as well as the driver and created the market for rider and the ride. So government cannot anticipate, and it bypassed a lot of labor laws, it bypassed a lot of union constructs of taxi drivers, and came to existence. While government works on plays the catch-up, the entire taxi industry was gone, more or less, give or take. So that's going to be there. That tussle is always going to be there.
I walked in late, sorry, so I only heard the last couple people talk, and I just have a couple questions for you. And I'd like to ask the panel. So I'm Rosalie Bingham. I am in a different workshop or conference, and this gentleman on the right, David, said, come in, and I wanted to hear what he had to say, and I loved his last comment. My question to the panel is, tell me something that I don't know that you think it's really important that I know. And you don't know anything about me, but just that's a question for me to ask you so you can help me understand what's something, because I think we all need to be educated and aware. And I just want to know something that you think I should know that you can share with me. And I'd just like the panel to kind of tell me, because I'd like to get to know what they know.
What a unique question. Thank you for asking. If we could frame our responses in the spirit of decoding the digital economy, that could potentially help guide our responses, but we can start on this side.
Yeah, I think you threw a challenge to us. Let me take a swipe at it. So digital economy, we need to be very careful about it. It's going to create many millionaires. It's going to create many millionaires. I humbly and boldly predict that in 10 to 15 years, we'll have a trillionaire, our first trillionaire. I think he'll be more 10 times richer than Elon Musk. But there will not be any billionaire. The point is there will be a huge divide between the rich and the haves and have-nots. Big divide. So there will be trillionaires, a handful of them, many, many millionaires. The neo-millionaires will be the average Joe. Okay, so digital divide is going to continue. And what's the result of that? The result of that will be that a good size of population, I wouldn't say good size, but about 10% or so, will turn anti-digital. Anti-digital. We are seeing anti-movements, right? People are leaving meat, which was a staple or exotic stuff. Now people are turning and becoming vegan. Similarly, people will turn anti-digital. Amish people, like don't like to use technology. Similarly, the good-sized population will try to avoid technology because they will perceive that it's doing more harm than good. So that's a speculative answer, but I'm not sure it gives you any new insight.
Thank you, Sudhakar.
I think we're starting to.
Digital to 10%, what's the other 90%? You said 10% is digital, anti-digital, so what's the other 90?
Yeah, so 90% would be, among that, the binary I said, between trillionaires and millionaires. So huge divide in between. So that.
Later, I have a solution for that.
Yeah,
Sure, thank you.
Actually, just to tie that last thought up, I recommend researching something called headless checkout. It's the decentralization of payment processing and gateways. So it's something that adds to that whole story. Well, with that, thank you very much to our panelists for their expertise, for their participation. Thank you to the audience for hanging in there with us on a Friday afternoon. And I hope everyone else continues to enjoy the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much, panelists. That was very insightful. We are going to take a approximately 60-minute break for lunch, and we'll see you back then.